Hello, friends! It is a dreary and rainy day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, if you can believe it. It is currently 65 degrees Fahrenheit and rain is forecasted for the next hour. Today, I woke up thinking about Ariana Grande's deluxe album, Eternal Sunshine, Brighter Days Ahead. Looks like the rain will slow down or come to a halt in about an hour or so, and it will be about 61 degrees Fahrenheit out the rest of the evening. So I just picked out my outfit. And now I'm going to get ready, and you're gonna get ready with me. So I've been having a hyperfixation lately on going to the movies alone. I have never in my life been a solo moviegoer. A few weeks ago, I went to see a movie by myself for the very first time. I went to my favorite local independent theater in Pittsburgh. It's called The Manor. I love The Manor. It's my favorite local indie theater. It's my favorite theater in Pittsburgh, I would say. And I went to see Mickey 17. I had been hearing a lot about Mickey 17. I really knew very little going into it at all. I knew it was the director that directed and won Best Picture for Parasite, and that was pretty much it. I knew it was his like blank check film, and that's pretty much all I knew. And I went to the theater by myself. The Manor is great. It has a little bar, so I got a glass of white wine, my favorite, and I got a little popcorn. But it's hard to talk while I'm doing my eyeliner, so. So I sat down in Mickey 17 with my wine and my popcorn, and I sat by myself, and there was a girl in front of me who was also sitting by herself, and I actually ran into an old professor of mine, and that was really fun to see him. He was one of my favorite professors. I really enjoyed that class, so it was cool to see him. So anyway, I had a lovely time. It was like a Saturday night. I had no plans. I went alone to this theater that I love. I got a glass of wine and a popcorn, and I sat there. I really enjoyed the movie. Like, it left an impression on me. It was a very good movie. I can see the criticism that it's half-baked, but I won't get into like a whole critique of Mickey 17. I could literally go on and on about that movie, trust me, but I won't in this video because that is not the point of this video. That was my first time going to a movie alone, was Mickey 17. I went to another movie alone like a couple weekends later, and I went to see 2001 Space Odyssey in the IMAX theater at the Science Center in Pittsburgh. And so that was really cool. I went by myself to that, and there were a ton of other people by themselves too. Yeah, I've just made a commitment to myself to do more things alone in general, and also to do more movies alone. I'm actually going to see the movie tonight at a cinema house, at a movie theater called Row House. And Row House is a small independent theater in Pittsburgh. And I'm quite excited to go because I've only been there once before, and it was for like a private screening that this organization was showing a film. I actually knew someone, I was dating someone who was in the film, so we went to this private screening at Row House. I'll do like a line. Bro, is this so crazy that I did my makeup like this? Did I just go crazy and be like so not cute? It's not bad, it's just I'm not sure that it's good. So anyway, this was a very ADHD get ready with me. I was bouncing all over the place. But the moral of the story here is go to the movies by yourself. Take yourself on a little solo date to the movies. Get a popcorn or your favorite movie theater candy. If your local movie theater offers adult beverages and you indulge in that sort of thing, maybe get a glass of wine or a beer or a cocktail. The thing about the movies that's really nice is that it's kind of an age-old classic solo activity. People go to the movies by themselves all the time. I think I've been to so many movies when I've seen someone sitting by themselves and I've never thought, oh, that's weird. Why would they come to a movie if they're by themselves? Or I've never thought anything negative about it. If anything, I've been like, that's so cool that, you know, they're just like taking themselves out to the movies and they have the confidence to do that and like the courage, you know, to just like do a solo activity. If you are new to the solo date thing and you want to do an activity by yourself, a movie is a great place to dip your toes in the water because the lights dim, the movie plays, you just sit there and you absorb the film. There's no pressure or expectation at all that you have a friend or anyone with you to chit chat with throughout. That's not the nature of the activity. It's normal. Like, it's normal to do whatever you want by yourself. It's normal. I hate the word normal. I try not to use it, but it feels very normal to go to the movies by yourself. People do it all the time. You know, hopefully I have successfully encouraged you to go on a solo date to the cinema. A book spine hates to see me coming. I love getting to a like far enough along part of the book where I can finally like peel it back and crack the spine. And what's really satisfying is that this David Foster Wallace essay about David Lynch is like right at that perfect sweet spot in the book where I cracked the spine open and it really cracked open. Like you can see it's like right through the middle basically of the book, and it's like to the point that even the inside seam is just like, you know, torn open. I don't know. Something about it is so satisfying to me. Anyway, I'm going on a solo date to the movies tonight and I'm going to see Mulholland Drive, directed by the one and only David Lynch. I have never seen a David Lynch film. I've never seen Twin Peaks. I've never seen any movie directed by David Lynch. I have not been exposed to David Lynch's art at all in my life. When David Lynch passed, I had been aware that I needed to be exposed to his work. I had been aware that I had kind of a blind spot there, that for someone who loves movies and loves art and loves artists, I was missing out on David Lynch in my life. And I was aware of that. And then when he passed, I just really recognized, I think for the first time, his cultural impact and cultural significance. And so I have been more curious about David Lynch lately, and then I joined the Row House Film Club, and they're doing a David Lynch week, and they're showing David Lynch movies this week, and the best on the schedule to me, just timing-wise, looked like Mulholland Drive. Anyway, I have said that my exposure to David Lynch is very minimal at this point. If you know me, and if you've been following me for a while, and if you listened to the 10 Pages podcast at all, then you probably know that I am a huge fan of David Foster Wallace. I love DFW's writing. I read Infinite Jest. That is what inspired me to create a podcast in the first place. I won't get into all of it, but if you want to know more, you can go and find the 10 Pages podcast and listen to the inaugural very first episode, which is about Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I discussed in that episode the accusations, the credible abuse allegations against David Foster Wallace and some of the concerns about his character. I don't want to diminish or dismiss any of that, but David Foster Wallace as a writer is just one of the most inspiring writers I've ever read. Honestly, reading David Foster Wallace's writing is not inspiring, it's discouraging. It's like, I will never write anything that masterful. But I was feeling like I wanted to be inspired / discouraged. I was in that mood, and I opened up a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. And I saw an essay titled David Lynch Keeps His Head. I've been curious about David Lynch lately. I knew I had tickets to see Mulholland Drive. It was perfect. Like, let's learn a little bit more about David Lynch. I knew that David Foster Wallace was a fan of David Lynch. And in fact, in the first page of the David Lynch Keeps His Head essay, David Foster Wallace writes, "I'm a fanatical Lynch fan." So, knew he was a fan, and I am not surprised at all that he wrote an essay about David Lynch, but I think it's really cool that me not knowing much about David Lynch and just being really curious to learn more about him, I think there's no better way to get introduced to the auteur than by one of my favorite writers of all time, David Foster Wallace. So let's get into it. I have some notes here in my notebook. I've stated on this channel before that I think a true artist is someone who just creates a lot of work because there's an urge within them to create. And in the first couple of pages of this essay, David Lynch Keeps His Head, David Foster Wallace writes in a footnote, of course, that David Lynch displayed manic creative activity. So of course that piques my interest. I am always fascinated by artists who, you know, experience, quite frankly, some form of like mania when it comes to their art. That resonates with me because I really admire artists that do create in sort of manic bursts of activity. Also, as I've said before, I love the Andy Warhol quote, just create art while the world is deciding whether it's good or bad, make more art. That's kind of my ethos, I guess. David Foster Wallace literally writes in this essay, whether you believe he's a good auteur or a bad one, his career makes it clear that he is indeed an auteur. It just kind of resonates with me and I think relates to my like ethos and the Andy Warhol quote about just make art whether people decide whether it's good or bad. Like Wallace literally writes, like, whether you think he's a good or bad filmmaker, he is a filmmaker, he is an auteur, he is an artist. I just love that. Also, as I'm talking about Warhol, I guess that just as someone with no exposure to David Lynch, I guess it informed me a bit to read that David Lynch, after the release of Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, which were like smash successes, the first season of Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet smash successes for David Lynch, Wallace writes, clearly established himself as the USA's foremost avant-garde / commercially viable avant-garde / offbeat director. And for a while there, it looked like he might be able to single-handedly broker a new marriage between art and commerce in US movies, opening formula-frozen Hollywood to some eccentricity and vigor of art film. Lynch is basically helping to marry a art film and a commercially successful film. He's kind of the Warhol of film. Warhol is notorious for blending commercial art with high art, and that's kind of what Wallace is saying Lynch has done, is make art films that are commercially viable, commercially successful. So that's cool to just know kind of more about what Lynch is doing with his films and why they're so significant. I have to get going. I am actually running 5 minutes behind schedule per usual, but I'm really excited to think more about this David Foster Wallace essay when I get back from the movie, and also just share some initial thoughts and reactions to the film with you all. It's not like that movie just changed my life or anything. Okay, but for real, not to be dramatic, one of the cooler things I've ever experienced. What the fuck was that? What was that? So cool though. I mean, like, it really was blowing my mind. Like, the entire time I was just like, huh? I don't even know. I have a lot of thoughts and I want to share them all, but I need to slip into something comfy and eat some leftover pasta that I have in my fridge, and then I am going to tell you guys all about it. Okay, I'll be back soon. Oh my gosh, I'm in my pajamas. I'm just gonna wash this off my face. I had a great time at the movies tonight. I really like Row House. The theater is really so cool and so cute inside. They have like it's called Beer Port next door. You can get beers. And then there's like a cellar downstairs and they have taps and stuff, and it's like a cute little, just like cozy, adorable little cellar downstairs. So you can go down to the cellar and like get a glass of wine in like a little plastic cup and take it into the movie with you and enjoy your wine with your popcorn. It was a packed house, like every seat was full. So that was cool. There were some other people who were chilling solo, and something that was so incredibly amazing was before the movie started, the movie theater played a David Lynch weather report from the day that we're seeing the movie in 2022. So cute, so wholesome, so fun. So I love that little touch that they added. The movie got started, and right off the bat, I'm like, okay, I can see how this is surreal. Like, I see what people mean when they say this is a surrealist art film. Like, I got that. I was engaged. I was hooked, like, right from the beginning. I'm like, you know, who are these? You know, what's going on? It's, like, suspenseful. Like, you're kind of... I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Just like, what is gonna happen? What is happening? You know, it's very postmodern in that you just get dropped into the story right in the middle of it without much of any explanation of who these people are and what the context is of what they're going through. Love that. I just wanted to figure out the puzzle, you know? I just wanted to put it all together and solve it and understand what was happening. So I really am just gonna keep this pretty brief, but I do have some immediate thoughts and reactions that I am excited to share with you all. I really want to say that I went to a Salvador Dali exhibit at the Boston Museum of Fine Arts. My mind was completely blown. I was there by myself and I just wanted to turn to a random stranger and say, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was honestly having a very similar experience watching this David Lynch film, Mulholland Drive. I wanted to just turn to a random stranger in the theater and say, I've never seen a Lynch film before, this is my first time, and my mind is blown. I'm so happy that I experienced my first Lynch film in the movie theater as it's meant to be experienced. And I'm even more grateful that I read Wallace's David Lynch Keeps His Head essay before going. And it just was so, like, cosmic. I just happened to pick up a supposedly fun thing, and I've been interested in Lynch lately, and I saw there was a Lynch essay that I hadn't previously been drawn to because I didn't know that much about Lynch, and I just happened to read the essay weeks before I had already bought tickets to see my first Lynch film in theaters. Love it. Love that for me. But while I feel that I learned about Lynch and I feel very intrigued by Lynch, and I need to see Blue Velvet now, and I need to watch Twin Peaks now, what this viewing of Mulholland Drive really did for me was it furthered my Wallace studies. I'm sorry, after seeing Mulholland Drive, I understand Wallace better, and I understand this book better. I understand Infinite Jest better. I knew the second I closed this book, I knew the moment I finished this book that it was about the journey and not the destination. I knew that it was about reading good writing for the sake of good writing. And it is a puzzle, and there is a story here that you can piece together, and that's very important. I'm trying to just keep it very high level here, or whatever, like not get too in the weeds on Infinite Jest here. But I now, because I've seen a Lynch film, and because I know how Wallace feels about Lynch, I now know that Infinite Jest in many ways is just a collection of vibes. It doesn't all need to fit neatly together. It's just a collection of vibes. And I say that because Wallace writes, Lynch's movies are about images and stories in his head that he wants to see made external and completely real. And he appears not to give much of a shit whether you like it or even get it. I don't know, it just really helped me understand Infinite Jest better and David Foster Wallace better, in the sense that, you know, the anti-narrative of postmodernism, the sort of rejection of a traditional narrative structure. Here's something that really felt divine. The girl next to me was there with her boyfriend, and she was clearly not having a good time. She had never seen a Lynch film. I heard the boyfriend say, well, you've never seen one of his movies before. It was really funny because in early-ish in the film, maybe 45 minutes into it, the projector in the movie theater like froze, and so the screen just froze, and I'm like, is this supposed to be happening in the movie? Like, is it frozen? And then people started like getting up and like going to tell them that like, oh, the screen froze, like the projector froze. And I just think that's so funny that that happened. But during this little intermission we got, this little accidental intermission we got, the girl sitting next to me, her boyfriend was like, what are you thinking of it so far? And she goes, it's like corny. Ugh. I was meant to hear that girl say, it's like corny. Everything fell into place for me. Everything clicked. So in another essay, in a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again, which is called E Unibus Plurum, Television and U.S. Fiction. So it's a very key Wallace text to understanding kind of his thesis and the direction he was trying to push literature in, and fiction, and you could say, you know, any narrative art like film. And it was really the pathway he was trying to pave forward for writers and artists in the future. Because in E Unibus Plurum, Wallace argued for writers and artists to move away from irony, the irony of postmodern art. Wallace has written a lot and spoken a lot about how everything in postmodern art is so ironic, and he's basically arguing that this irony is like deteriorating society. Everything's a big joke. Everything's irony or parody or satire, not satire, but everything's irony or parody, and nothing is serious. And it makes us as Americans have this sort of like disgust or disdain or discomfort with sincerity and with earnestness. And when people are being genuine and bearing their emotions without cloaking it in irony and parody and making it a joke and saying the opposite of what they mean, you know, he just felt like this was really negatively impacting American culture. And so in E Unibus Plurum, Wallace argued for a move away from the irony of postmodern art, and he called for a reclaiming of sincerity. In Mulholland Drive, Lynch allows for real sentimentality. He is willing to be earnest. He is willing to let his characters be earnest. He depicts his characters' feelings. He directs the actors to depict their characters' feelings without irony or parody. The characters express themselves really theatrically and melodramatically, like when Betty is expressing to Rita that I'm in love with you. I'm in love with you. It feels, well, it was interpreted by the girl next to me as being corny, but really it's just overtly and extremely sincere and earnest. It's emotionally vulnerable. It's putting yourself out there straightforwardly. In E Unibus Plurum, Wallace writes, "The next real literary rebels in this country might well emerge as some weird bunch of anti-rebels, born oglers who dare somehow to back away from ironic watching, who have the childish gall actually to endorse single entendre principles, who treat of plain old untrendy human troubles and emotions in US life with reverence and conviction, who eschew self-consciousness and hip fatigue. These anti-rebels would be outdated, of course, before they even started. The new rebels might be artists willing to risk the yawn, the rolled eyes, the cool smile, the nudged ribs, the parody of the gifted ironist, the oh how banal, to risk accusations of sentimentality, melodrama, of over-credulity, of softness, of willingness to be suckered by a world of lurkers and starers who fear gaze and ridicule above imprisonment without law. Who knows? Today's most engaged young fiction does seem like some kind of line's end. I guess that means we all get to draw our own conclusions. Have to. Are you immensely pleased?" The point here is that Lynch is an anti-rebel that Wallace is talking about. Lynch is a new rebel, an artist willing to risk the rolled eyes, to risk the girl in the audience next to me saying it's like corny, to risk the accusations of sentimentality and melodrama. Lynch in Mulholland Drive presents true, honest, earnest, sentimental human emotions, and he's not doing it as a joke. He's not doing it ironically. He's not doing it as a parody of culture or anything like that. Lynch is just being earnest. I just feel like I learned so much tonight about postmodern art and Wallace and Lynch, David and David, and I don't know if any of this made sense to anyone, but my brain, the gears are churning, and I'm not the best communicator of all this stuff. I hope it makes sense to someone out there. If you are still watching, thank you for being here. If you came to this video purely out of interest in me discussing David Lynch, I hope you're not too disappointed that this was really an episode about David Foster Wallace. I am so excited to explore more David Lynch. I highly recommend Mulholland Drive. I definitely am gonna watch Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks. Those are top of my list now in the next things I want to explore, and I'm totally gonna, like, tonight and tomorrow, gonna keep researching Mulholland Drive and David Lynch and just like learn as much as I can because I'm fascinated. Cheers to learning, and cheers to obsessing, and cheers to manic creative activity. All right, that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. This little video was like a 10 pages podcast meets day in the life / get ready with me vlog meets video essay about postmodernism. Like, what? I don't know what I'm doing. In true Carly Bellini fashion, I'm just doing it my way. I don't know if it'll play well with the algorithm, but as I've said countless times, I'm doing this because I'm an artist and I want to get my thoughts out there. So anyway, I'm rambling. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for sticking around till the end. I appreciate you. Now it is time for me to jump into my cozy bed. I'll catch you back here next time. Until then, peace and love.